in a more meaningful way than the interim job that Anthony Hudson is doing at the current moment. Let's evaluate Anthony Hudson then really quick before we talk about the other CONCACAF Nations League matches and any other final thoughts that we have for today's show. Anthony Hudson, Chuck.
Give him the job. End of discussion. Give him the job, Jimmy.
Yeah, come on, Heath. Come on. You can't give him the job.
Change my voice so it sounds like
Charlie. No, you can't. You can't give him the job.
Let's quote Charlie as saying that, though, when we go
Yes,
on
let's get that. Let's clip that and let's overdub Charlie's voice.
Yeah.
So Chuck, Anthony Hudson, obviously in the January camp didn't win a game, but in 2 games here, Granada, I expect that. El Salvador, obviously we have this tremendous record against El Salvador in general, but he put out a pretty good lineup. If we're just looking at El Salvador, I thought he made the subs at the right time. Obviously, Pepe comes on and scores right after, has an immediate impact. Your thoughts on Anthony Hudson?
I think he's doing a great job as a caretaker. As an interim manager, I think he's doing a great job. I'd say January camp was probably one of those times where he's learning as the first time. Where
Charlie's giving him the stepdad vibes, dude. Just like, he'll never really be dad, but like, he's doing a great job playing the role.
He got me some ice cream and I don't usually get some.
Hey, I'm keeping it real. So I think it was a learning curve for him being the boss. In January, I think he took a step forward in this camp. The first game, obviously, just inferior opponent, but took advantage of it with the right lineup. And I liked how he wanted to make tweaks. And in this game, second half, the team needed to respond. He got them to respond because that's his job. Get the energy up, get the team to play a certain style and way. So I think from that standpoint, you have nothing to say, but we all know this is an interim manager. This is not a full-time manager. This is not someone who is going to have the job long-term. That's just not a possibility. So you're waiting for the best option. I think if anything, that this tells us, you don't have to rush to hire someone that could be not the right choice. You can trust him to keep this program moving forward, even if it's not the lightning pace that we want this group to be making, but to keep them moving forward until we get the right manager.
I guess one of my questions then would be, and I've got 2 here for you, Heath, and for everybody else that's listening. Drop us a follow on Twitter as well, ISWT Pod. Is when I think about Anthony Hudson and just his job and caretaker manager, at what point do we want to start to really take this next cycle seriously? Like, we need to start establishing an identity sooner rather than later. Obviously, we gotta hire a coach, but when does that become critical? I assume the summer, because we've got some pretty meaningful games coming up with the Nations League and the Gold Cup. A good chance to be immersed in the group and have some time to be around the group in a meaningful way, which you won't get once the European season starts again, and it's harder to get around the guys over a longer period of time. So that's one. Second, Heath, against Granada, there was a lot of talk from certain players that Anthony Hudson's letting them play free in the attacking third and letting them try things and being more creative. Clearly a backhanded shot at Greg and maybe how systematic he is in trying to play a certain way. But against El Salvador, a team that was a lot more organized than Granada, I felt like we needed maybe some of those ideas, like a mix of that freedom and having some of those parameters where it's not just, let's just figure it out on the fly. And it felt like maybe we needed a little bit of coaching, and we got it at halftime because it showed. We just had a little bit more urgency. We had Gio a little bit higher. We started to unlock them. They got a little bit tired, and we took our chance, and we win the game. But I wonder what that sweet spot is as we go from like total freedom and no freedom at all, and can we find it? And do we have the group that can solve that in real time when things aren't working? Like finding that plan B if plan A isn't working. Sorry, there's a lot of layers to that. You can just run with it.
I would say, again, like adopting certain games that are part of the modern, certain systems that are part of the modern game now is different to the national team, to the club team, right? Club team, you can work on it every single day in the way in which you want to, I did the Houston Dynamo game last weekend, and the way that they press, you can tell that they spend every day working on a press, whether they're in a high block or mid or a low block. And that's hard in the national team, right? And the national team has a completely different level of egos and players playing in different types of system. A club team, you can build it how you want it. And I know we have specialty type of players, and eventually we're going to have to get to that point, but you also need quality players on the field. I guess my question goes back to both of you. I don't ever remember feeling in any national team coach that I had that I lacked, like, it was always sort of a pessimistic mindset in terms of like being disciplined and being organized was like the number one factor, right? At least from you and I, Jimmy, from a defensive standpoint. And then there was like pick and choose your moments, but it was set in like a smart system versus, maybe being super, super rigid, like where you're not allowed to go forward as a fullback or whatever it is. I always felt that, again, I think that maybe Greg did try to take it too far and make it too rigid,
Okay. Charlie, any comments on that? I mean, there's a lot of shouts in the chat for Hugo Perez being a potential candidate for us. I think he's shown, obviously he's coached a lot of our youth national teams and he's in our National Soccer Hall of Fame for all the great work he did as a player. Really special player, by the way. I wish YouTube and social media had been around when he was going. I think we'd be looking at him a lot different as a proper legend that he is. And we've had him on the show before, and he's said some very insightful things. Do you feel like they should at least listen to what he has to say about what he could do with our full national team? Because there is something he's getting a lot out of that group in El Salvador that makes him difficult to break down.
Well, I think he should be a candidate for sure. But more importantly, this is a coach and a former player who should be a manager in Major League Soccer.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'd love to see him do that.
This is I think the next step for him. And if he had success in MLS, then he'd be, I think, a real candidate to get the U.S. men's national team job. But it still boggles my mind that he's not one of the first names linked to a job. If there's, whether a manager is shaky, for instance, Minnesota has been a team that's, Kansas City, I know Peter Vermees just signed an extension, but they're not looking like they're going in any positive direction. So you're looking at some of these clubs and you're saying they could really use a new manager. Miami, another one that I think Hugo Perez could do a terrific job in, especially if you're talking about some culture, Latin culture. Hugo Perez is your man. Someone who's proven, who can develop young talent, give them opportunities. It's a no-brainer. So for me, it's more of a Hugo Perez should be getting MLS jobs, and they should be coming at him, flying at him, and let him decide which one makes the most sense. But in terms of U.S. men's national team, I don't know if he is the one, but certainly a candidate considering the people that have been talked about being linked with this job.
Hey, Heath, I don't know if you picked up on that, but Charlie just called Phil Neville a gringo.